dias.
Buenos dias.
So let's continue to talk about our new region, world region of Middle America. And we're going to continue today. What we're going to talk about now maybe is some population patterns. Let's also go over the concept of altitudinal zonation, which has to do with landscape type and climate and crops. So let's go ahead and start with the population pattern. So if you were to look at a population pattern, usually shown in a dot map, where would be the largest concentrations of people? Correct, Mexico City. So this is one of the, again, this is one of the smaller, it's a very smallish region. You've got islands, which are small island states, and they're generally quite crowded, and they're quite small. And so these small island states don't make up a lot of territory. So this is probably the second smallest, I think it's the second smallest world region. And it has only 200 million people. But it can be quite concentrated in certain areas. So more than half the people are located where? Mexico. And most people in Mexico would be centered on Mexico City. And again, that is an ancient culture heart of the Aztecs and Toltecs before them. So where would be some other patterns that you would see? The biggest pattern would be there. But also there is another pattern that is known as NAFTA North. Because of the North American Free Trade Agreement, there's a lot of money to be had at the border. Maquiladoras would line the border. That is the Spanish for industrial complexes, sometimes known as sweatshops, where people can often work for pennies on the dollar. But sometimes that's the only job to be had. So that would be, sometimes pennies on the dollar means survival. So up on the border here would be another area where there would be population centers, much located where you would have industry, maquiladoras. Also, there's some issues at the border there. What are some of the issues that would come along with having NAFTA money? There's also trafficking. This is where drugs would come through, so they would come through at the border there. So there's a lot of issues there in gangs and violence. But that's a population pattern that would draw people. There would be a lot of activity there. The economic activity draws people there too. So what about right here? You see a zone that's on the Pacific side of the mountains. El Salvador is the center of it, where you would have a heavily populated area here on the Pacific side. You would also have, as I said before, the islands are quite densely populated for their size. Okay? Okay, so those are the main population patterns that we have right there. Then we have climate. Climate, we have something called altitudinal zonation. Now, do you recall the different zones? What's the name of the hottest, lowest zone in the flat areas? That would be the caliente, or hot zone. Caliente is hot in Spanish. Caliente zone, where you could grow, much like Guam here. So Guam here is mostly close to sea level. Our highest point is Mount Lamlam, the top of the very old volcano, which now has been worn down quite a bit. So caliente zone, you could grow bananas and what else? Yes. Sugar, right, pineapples. Okay, so this is all the hot zones and the flat zones are where there's going to be plantations. So, and I'd like you to know the next highest zone. Most zones are caliente and this next highest. And that one is Tierra Templada, meaning temperate lands. Okay, so there you can grow coffee, corn, maize, wheat. Yes, so when it gets a little bit cooler also, there's less mosquitoes. And I'm going to have some great stories, travel stories about parasitic kinds of conditions that you can get from being bitten by or stung by mosquitoes. I did have a little situation, some travelers I brought back with me. So I'll give you those stories later. But needless to say, when you get up a little bit higher and it's a little bit cooler, then you don't have as many mosquitoes, insects. It's quite pleasant, and that's a lot of the reason why people live up in the higher areas, around Mexico City. Okay, I think we're having a low battery situation, I was told before. Yes, okay. So maybe we'll just stop right here for today. Thank you. We'll start again next time. Adios.
Adios.